You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
This is the Daniel Monday Night Community Show on demand through YouTube. Thank you very much for choosing to listen to us through this method. If you'd like to keep up to date with when I add new interviews, then subscribe to this channel. So we're next going to be joined on the phone with our latest guest, and we're going to be talking all about a new book. Firstly, thank you very much for talking to us. I was hoping you could introduce yourself to our listeners firstly.
Yes, my name's Peter Cook. I run a business in Kent called the Academy of Rock. It fuses business with music, which sounds like a strange thing, but in fact it works rather well. And I go around the world speaking to companies and making business thinking a little more interesting and trying to get them to do things rather than just listen to people.
So I was hoping you could next tell our listeners what your latest book's called and go on to tell them a little bit about it as well.
Yes, I've written a couple of books recently. The one that perhaps is coming up soon is called Punk Rock People Management. It's a very strange title. You don't have to pogo when you read it. It's a book that actually takes, I guess, the attitudes of punk rock, which are keeping it simple, keeping things brief, and making them more authentic. And I think a lot of businesses in a busy age need to keep things simple, short, and leaders need to be actually really good at being themselves and being authentic. So it's taking those ideas and sort of playing them forward into the context of a business book. The book itself also uses very strange titles for the chapters. So it's things like Ever Fallen in Love, about the appraisal process at work and things like that. So it uses punk rock as its sort of titles and borrows a few ideas from my role as a musician as well as a business person. But it's a lot of fun, and the book is published by a local Kent publisher called Cultured Llama, who are down in Tenham, and they've taken the book on, and we're launching it later in the month at a special event.
So how did you come to write the book?
Well, I've written quite a lot of books, actually, about sort of 9 at the last count, but this one came out of a certain frustration. I mean, a lot of creativity in people's lives comes out of people's frustration. So, I think the Dyson vacuum cleaner was come out of the frustration of James Dyson thinking that his Hoover wouldn't suck. So I was frustrated with the HR profession, having worked quite a lot in that area and been the Kent branch chair of the Institute of HR down here. And I noticed that really there was a lot of talk about HR, but there wasn't very much good practice. And I also studied HR for a while and found that the average textbook on business and HR was like War and Peace. And I thought, it's got to be simpler than this. You've got to be able to sort of get it down to a few pages. So I set myself the task of reducing all of HR and sort of business and people management down to an incredibly short but potent 39 pages. So that's what I did. And once you think that idea, you have to do it, of course. So I managed to make each chapter read very, very short. And it sort of almost reads like a song, because there is a bit of sort of rhyming and alliteration in places even. So it's almost business poetry, I suppose I could say. So
is this the only book you've written?
No, it's not. In fact, I'm just writing a new book for Bloomsbury, the people who brought Harry Potter to the world, and I've written about, 9 books over the last 20-odd years. The first one was a book on creativity in business, and then just recently I've updated a book called The Music of Business, again published by the local publishers there, so there's been quite a few books, and the next one, the big one, is coming out next year with Bloomsbury, which we haven't got a title for yet, but it'll be about leadership.
Now, next I think you want to talk a little bit more about the publisher.
Yes, Cultured Llama. They're almost a punk rock publisher because they're an independent publisher, and I did have the book published before. I got fed up a bit, to be honest, with Amazon. I didn't think they were exactly always playing fair with everything. So I decided I put a note on Facebook. I said, look, I've had enough of this. Does anyone fancy, taking this book on? And almost immediately, I got several people saying, oh, you should talk to these guys. They're a small publisher, but small is beautiful in this world, and they can actually, they can do what Amazon can't do, which is get me my books when I want them. They're all on Amazon as well, but I get superb service, which I don't get with Amazon because they're a great big sort of monolith in the middle of the United States, and you can't even get through to them to get anything done. So I really like the sort of indie publisher idea of Cultured Llama. I also, the guy who runs it, Bob, and his partner Maria, Bob himself is a scientist, and I used to be a scientist in terms of, I worked in pharmaceuticals and then spent some time teaching business courses for the Open University, and I've also played guitar. So I sort of bring those things together of science, business and sort of music in the punk rock book, and I get on really well with Bob because he's a biologist, so he understands me and I understand him. So really good publisher to have a look at, Cultured Llama. You can find them on www.culturedllama.co.uk, and all the books are there.
Now, I understand that you're going to have a book launch coming up, so I was hoping you could tell our listeners a bit more about that and when and where it is.
Yes, the book launch itself, which is for both books, is on Tuesday, June the 9th, down at the Sun Pier Arts Centre in Chatham, which is a beautiful location on the riverside. We've got a whole evening of music, film, spoken word, a few interviews and a meet and greet with a chap called Richard Strange. Now, Richard Strange had a pre-punk band called the Doctors of Madness that they didn't last very long because punk evaporated in the blink of an eye, but they were hugely influential on quite a lot of people that you will have heard of. Richard went on to become an actor. He's been in all kinds of things. He was a Death Eater in Harry Potter. He was Robin Hood's executioner, and he was alongside Jack Nicholson in Batman. So he's an extremely interesting character, and Richard's going to be sort of leading the evening. I'm going to be doing a talk about punk rock and business. I'll be playing a few riffs. Richard will be playing some of his riffs and his songs from his 35-year career in all sorts of areas. And it's going to be a fantastically good evening. The tickets for it are just £10. So if you want to meet Harry Potter's Death Eater and Robin Hood's executioner, come down to Sun Pier Arts Centre on June the 9th. The ticket's £10. at www.richardstrange.com/events/other, or just get in touch with me and we can sort that out as well.
Was there anything else you wanted to get over to our listeners or refresh them on?
Well, come to the evening and find out. I think it's probably the best thing. Have a look at the Cultured Llama website. If you can't get through to Richard Strange on the web link that I gave, then people can always email me via my website, which is www.academy-of-rock.co.uk. So that's Academy of Rock with hyphens between the words. A bit difficult to explain down the phone, but there we go. But get down to Sun Pier Arts Centre on June the 9th and we'll have a great time, and music, film, song, dance, wine, wisdom.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time out to tell our listeners all about your book and also when they can go along to the event as well.
Thank you very much, Daniel.